Most people think Iran's power comes from oil, deserts, and a long history of conflict. But what if I told you Iran is sitting on a hidden treasure and it's doing almost nothing with it? With over 2,400 kilometers of coastline, Iran has access to not one, but two of the world's most important bodies of water: the Caspian Sea in the north and the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman in the south. This geography could have turned Iran into a regional superpower in trade, tourism, shipping, and even logistics, just like the UAE, Oman, and Singapore have done. But instead, most of that coastline looks like this: barren, neglected, and undeveloped. Meanwhile, other countries are getting richer as Iran keeps losing out to the tune of billions of dollars every year. In this video, we'll uncover why Iran's coastlines are more valuable than you think, what's stopping Iran from using them, and how much money it's actually losing because of inaction. And at the end, I'll reveal a surprising twist: how Iran's failure is secretly making one of its rivals even more powerful. So stick around, this is a story that Iran doesn't want you to see. When you look at a map, Iran stands in a place of incredible power. To the south, it touches both the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, two of the most important bodies of water in the world. And connecting them is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage through which about 20% of the world's oil flows. It's not just important, it's vital to global energy. Now think about this. If any other country controlled a choke point that valuable, they'd turn it into a money-making machine. Ports, trade zones, coastal cities, shipping hubs, tourism islands, the possibilities are endless. And Iran, it has over 2,400 kilometers of coastline. That's longer than the entire coastline of the UAE, and yet the UAE has built cities like Dubai and Abu Dhabi that have become global economic giants. Iran also has something most countries would envy: strategic islands like Kish, Kashm, and Hormuz. These islands sit in perfect positions for tourism, naval security, and international trade. Let's talk about Kish Island for a second. It's a free trade zone, it's beautiful, and it's one of the only places Iranians can visit without a visa. It could have been Iran's version of Singapore, or at least something close. Instead, it's quiet, underused, and isolated. Then there is Kashm Island, the largest island in the Persian Gulf, full of natural beauty, rich biodiversity, and untapped economic potential. And yet, even Kashm looks like a missed opportunity. Meanwhile, nearby countries are doing the opposite. Just across the water, the UAE has built Jebel Ali Port, one of the top 10 busiest ports in the world. It's connected to Dubai's infrastructure, surrounded by free zones, and generates billions in trade revenue. Oman too has developed Salalah port, turning its southern coast into a logistics hub connected to shipping lanes between Europe, Africa, and Asia. And Singapore, it's smaller than Tehran, but it became a global shipping and finance capital simply by using its coastal position wisely. Iran had all of this: geography, location, resources, but it never built the economic engines to match. It's like sitting on a gold mine and refusing to dig. The potential was massive. Imagine vibrant coastal cities, luxury tourism on the islands, a national port network connecting to Central Asia, South Asia, and beyond. And the geopolitical cloud that comes with controlling one of the world's most important maritime zones. But instead, Iran let that coastline stay empty, isolated, and forgotten. And the world, it moved on without Iran. So if Iran has the location, the coastline, and the resources, why hasn't it built anything? The answer isn't just one thing. It's a combination of internal obstacles and external pressure, a tangled web of politics, power, and paralysis. Let's start with the political structure. In most successful coastal economies, development is driven by local leadership, city governments, regional authorities, or even private developers who have autonomy. But in Iran, everything flows through Tehran. From budget approvals to business licenses, local provinces along the coast have very little control over their own development. That means a project that makes perfect sense in Hormozgan or Sistan Balochistan can get stuck in red tape for years because the capital won't greenlight it. Then there is the military factor, and it's a big one. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC) controls large portions of Iran's southern coastline. They're not just a military force, they are a powerful economic player. They own land, operate ports, run companies, and oversee construction projects. And their priorities are often strategic and security-based, not economic. So if you're a private investor who wants to build a resort or a commercial port, you might run into invisible walls or worse, no-go zones. But even if the internal politics and military control didn't exist, Iran still faces a global blockade. For over a decade, US and international sanctions have made it nearly impossible for Iran to attract serious foreign investment. No global bank wants to risk doing business there, no logistics company wants to invest in long-term infrastructure, and even countries that are willing, like India with the Chabahar port, constantly face US pressure and funding risks. These sanctions don't just freeze trade, they freeze ideas, capital, and momentum. But let's be honest, it's not just about foreign enemies. Much of Iran's stagnation is self-inflicted. Even when there are opportunities to build, Iran's system is plagued with corruption, bureaucracy, and lack of clear planning. There are overlapping government agencies, confusing regulations, frequent policy shifts, and a culture of wait and see where bold moves are often punished and playing it safe is the only option. Private developers face endless delays, local officials lack incentives, and the bigger vision, it's lost in the fog of internal dysfunction. So yes, sanctions hurt. Yes, foreign powers have made life harder, but when you peel back the layers, you realize something painful. Iran is stopping itself. And as the world builds glittering coastal cities and global ports all around it, Iran's golden coastline remains silent. The question is, how much is that silence costing? To truly understand how Iran is missing out on billions, we need to look at a very real example, one that had massive potential, international support, and the perfect location. And yet, it still failed to take off. Welcome to Chabahar Port, Iran's only deep-sea port sitting on the Gulf of Oman just outside the narrow Strait of Hormuz. This port was supposed to be Iran's answer to Pakistan's Gwadar port, which is being built with billions in Chinese investment under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. But unlike Gwadar, which is often seen as a piece on China's chessboard, Chabahar had India behind it. For India, Chabahar was a strategic dream, a way to bypass Pakistan entirely, connect directly to Afghanistan and Central Asia, and open a new trade route from the Indian Ocean to the heart of Eurasia. It was ambitious, it was smart, and it had the backing of two regional giants, India and Iran. But then, things started falling apart. First came the delays. Construction slowed down due to Iran's own bureaucracy, unclear policies, and slow decision-making. Then came the lack of infrastructure, no modern rail connections, poor roads, and limited storage facilities. It's like building a shiny airport in the middle of a desert without runways or planes. And just as the project needed momentum, US sanctions kicked in. Washington began pressuring India to step back. Indian companies and banks faced threats of financial penalties, and although the US technically gave some sanctions waivers for Chabahar, the fear and uncertainty scared off long-term investment. So India quietly slowed down, funding dried up, and the dream of turning Chabahar into a rival to Gwadar or even a regional trade hub began to fade. Today, Chabahar is functional, yes, but far from what it was meant to be. It handles a fraction of the traffic it could, it lacks modern port equipment, and the railway that was supposed to connect it to Afghanistan still incomplete. This was Iran's one shot to show the world that it could build a strategic port, work with a global partner, and reshape regional trade. But instead, Chabahar became a symbol not of success, but of missed potential. And the irony, while Chabahar struggles in silence, just 170 kilometers away, Pakistan's Gwadar port is making headlines backed by China, developed aggressively and marketed as the next big thing. It didn't have to be this way. Chabahar could have been Iran's gateway to Asia. Instead, it's a quiet reminder of how internal mismanagement, geopolitical isolation, and poor execution can turn opportunity into regret. And if Iran's best port project ended up like this, what does that say about the rest of its untouched coastline? It's one thing to say Iran is underdeveloped, but let's go deeper. How much money is Iran actually losing by ignoring its coastlines? Let's start with the trade route opportunity. Iran's southern coast lies directly on one of the busiest maritime highways in the world. Every year, trillions of dollars worth of goods pass through the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. If Iran had developed its ports, highways, and rail networks like its neighbors, it could have become a key logistics bridge between East and West, linking China, India, Central Asia, and Europe. But because of poor infrastructure and geopolitical isolation, Iran handles less than 1% of regional container traffic. Compare that to the UAE's Jebel Ali port, which alone moves over 14 million containers a year and generates billions in port fees, logistics services, and trade. That's just the beginning. Now let's talk tourism, or the lack of it. Iran's islands Kish, Kashm, and Hormuz have everything you'd expect in a world-class tourist destination. Pristine beaches, coral reefs, warm climate, and unique local culture. And yet, Iran receives only about 4 to 5 million international tourists a year, most of them religious pilgrims. Meanwhile, Dubai, built in a desert with no natural attractions, welcomes over 17 million tourists annually and earns $30 to $40 billion from tourism alone. Imagine if Kish and Kashm were turned into resort cities with 5-star hotels, international airports, and cruise ship terminals. Iran could easily compete or even outperform much of the Gulf region in terms of natural appeal. But the islands remain disconnected, poorly marketed, and under-regulated. Now think about real estate and urbanization. Coastal cities have historically driven economic booms. Look at Shanghai, Los Angeles, Dubai, and Singapore. People want to live near the sea. Businesses thrive near ports, but Iran's southern coastline is dotted with small, undeveloped towns with limited infrastructure and few incentives for private investment. If even a fraction of the coastline had been turned into modern port cities, Iran could have unlocked tens of billions in real estate growth, new housing, offices, hotels, and commercial districts. And finally, there is oil, the very resource Iran is known for. Because of limited coastal development, Iran lacks the modern export terminals and storage capacity that other oil-producing nations enjoy. This means longer wait times for tankers, outdated loading systems, and more reliance on older inland routes, all of which cost time and money. So what's the total damage? If Iran had developed its coastline even half as efficiently as the UAE, it could be generating $50 to $70 billion every year, just from tourism, ports, and coastal real estate. That's not potential. That's real measurable loss, year after year, decade after decade. And while Iran waits, the rest of the region gets richer. The big question is, who's benefiting the most from Iran's inaction? When a country fails to take advantage of its geography, the loss doesn't just stay local. It becomes an opportunity for others. And that's exactly what's happening with Iran's coastline. Because while Iran leaves billions on the table, its neighbors are quietly scooping them up. Let's start with the most obvious winner, the United Arab Emirates. The UAE has a much shorter coastline than Iran, but it's done something Iran hasn't. It built a vision. Cities like Dubai and Abu Dhabi now dominate regional tourism, finance, logistics, and real estate. Iran could have competed, but since it didn't, cargo ships, tourists, and investors all went across the Gulf to the UAE. Iran's silence gave Dubai a stage. Then there's Pakistan, a country that's often economically behind but has pulled ahead in one key area, its deep sea port at Gwadar. With China's Belt and Road Initiative, Gwadar is being transformed into a regional trade hub. And guess where it's located? Just 170 kilometers from Iran's underperforming Chabahar port. Had Iran developed Chabahar properly, it could have challenged or even replaced Gwadar as the region's link to Central Asia. But instead, India backed off, the port stalled, and now Pakistan is gaining regional influence thanks to China and thanks to Iran's inaction. Even Turkey has found indirect ways to benefit. As Iran becomes less attractive for trade corridors, Turkey's land routes and ports like Mersin and Istanbul have gained more significance in regional logistics, especially for Europe-bound shipments. Let's not forget Azerbaijan, which is actively pushing transport corridors through its territory to connect to the Caspian and beyond. And Russia increasingly looking for routes that bypass Iran entirely due to political unpredictability. Even Saudi Arabia, long a rival of Iran, is aggressively building its own futuristic coastal cities like Neom to attract global business and tourism. The Gulf states understand the value of coastlines. Iran has one of the longest but acts as if it has none. And here's the irony. Every year that Iran delays development, these other countries don't just grow, they take Iran's share of the market. Iran could have been a first mover. Instead, it's become a spectator. So when we say Iran is losing billions, it's not just theoretical. Those billions are going somewhere, and they're going to countries that saw an opportunity and acted. But is there still time for Iran to change course? Can it reclaim what it has lost, or has the tide already turned? Now you might be wondering, is Iran doing anything to change this? The answer is yes, but just barely. In recent years, Iran has started making small moves to unlock some of its coastal potential. But whether these steps are meaningful or just symbolic gestures is still up for debate. Let's start with the islands. On Kish Island, Iran has invested in expanding resorts, hotels, and shopping malls to attract tourists, especially from within the country and neighboring Gulf states. There's even an international airport and visa-free access for foreigners. But the scale still a fraction of what Dubai or even Qatar offers. Kashmir Island, the largest island in the Persian Gulf, was declared a free trade zone years ago. It's home to some natural wonders and protected areas. Iran has tried to attract foreign investment and boost ecotourism here. But without proper marketing, infrastructure, and international partnerships, the results have been limited. Then there are the port cities like Bandar Abbas, Jask, and Chabahar. Yes, there has been construction. Yes, roads and rails are being slowly developed, but the projects lack speed, scale, and most importantly, strategic direction. Iran often announces big coastal initiatives with impressive sounding names and visionary speeches, but on the ground, the execution is painfully slow. What takes the UAE 5 years to build often takes Iran 15 if it gets completed at all. Why? Because the same problems we talked about earlier, centralized control, IRGC land ownership, sanctions, red tape, still exist. They choke the life out of ambition. Private companies don't want to risk investing in something that could be halted by politics or targeted by sanctions. Even local entrepreneurs are hesitant to dream big because no one wants to build a hotel on land that might become a military zone next year. And while Iran takes small, uncertain steps, its neighbors are taking leaps. The UAE is planning floating cities. Saudi Arabia is building futuristic mega projects like Neom. Turkey is expanding its maritime infrastructure to dominate Black Sea and Mediterranean trade. In contrast, Iran's approach feels like someone trying to fill a dam with a teaspoon, too slow, too cautious, and too reactive. It's not that Iran lacks talent or vision. It's that its system punishes risk, and progress is always second to politics. So yes, Iran is trying, but the world isn't waiting. And that raises one final question. Is it already too late for Iran to turn the tide, or can it still recover what it lost? So the question now is it too late? Has Iran missed the boat entirely, or is there still a chance to turn this coastline into the economic engine it was always meant to be? Let's be honest, it won't be easy. Iran is facing a web of challenges that make rapid coastal development nearly impossible under current conditions. To truly unlock the value of its 2,400 kilometers of coastline, three massive changes would need to happen. First, there would need to be a shift in political governance. That means giving local provinces more control, allowing them to make development decisions without waiting for permission from Tehran. Places like Hormuzgan and Sistan-Balochistan need to operate like mini economic zones with authority to attract investment, cut red tape, and manage their resources. But Iran has always been Tehran-centric, and that's not changing anytime soon. Second, the military presence, particularly the IRGC's control over large swaths of coastal land, would need to be scaled back or redirected toward economic cooperation. Right now, security interests dominate coastal planning. But if Iran wants growth, it needs to think like Dubai, where ports and trade zones are safe but also open, vibrant, and business-friendly. That kind of transition requires deep institutional reform, something Iran's power structure has consistently resisted. Third, and maybe most importantly, Iran needs access to global markets. That means lifting or reducing sanctions, rebuilding trust with foreign investors, and opening its doors to regional and international partnerships. Even countries willing to invest, like China or India, are cautious. Until there is real economic diplomacy, no one will bring their money to Iran's shores. So yes, it's possible Iran could one day have modern ports, luxury coastal cities, and thriving tourism. It could use its geography not just to survive geopolitics, but to win at it. It could become a bridge between East and West, between Central Asia and the Indian Ocean. But that future isn't coming tomorrow, and maybe not for decades. Because right now, Iran isn't making bold moves. It's making cautious, conflicted, and often contradictory ones. The world is moving fast, but Iran is stuck in neutral, watching its coastlines remain quiet while other nations build the future around it. And the longer it waits, the harder it becomes to catch up. So can Iran turn the tide? Yes, but only if it's willing to change everything. Iran has one of the most powerful coastlines in the world, not just in geography but in potential. And yet, that power remains untapped, not because of enemies, not because of war, but because of choices or the lack of them. The question isn't can Iran build, it's will it ever dare to. And while its coastlines remain silent, there is another part of Iran's geography that tells a very different story. A story of strength, resilience, and mystery. In this next video, I explain why Iran cannot be conquered and how its harsh landscape might be the very reason it has survived every empire that tried to control it. Click here to watch that now, and if you found this breakdown valuable, like, subscribe, and join the conversation in the comments.